Part 7. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 61. After today's serialization meeting ended, Yoshida had a strange expression. He was sitting alone in the conference room with Makoto Takahashi's work in his hand. The editor next to him sighed, walked over and patted Yoshida on the shoulder without saying anything. "What, just left? I hope it won't affect the creation of Full Metal Alchemist." Yoshida muttered and left the conference room with some frustration. At the just concluded serialization meeting, Makoto Takahashi's planned new comic Higurashi Campus, Forever did not pass the serialization meeting. Many editors raised doubts about Makoto Takahashi's ability to serialize two comics at the same time. As the editor in charge, Yoshida argued hard, and although he reluctantly convinced everyone, he still failed to pass the commander-in-chief. Although the Phoenix in Murasaki manga has always performed well, please don't ignore the fact that he is only a high school student, Aida said with a serious face. The gimmick of a genius junior high school student has been used before. High school students, it's not very eye-catching. And to be honest, I didn't see anything outstanding about this work, with an ordinary protagonist and an average plot. But Aiken said, there are a lot of bold ideas in this work. Yoshida looked at the people around him seriously. Although this work was a little confusing at the beginning, but if I look carefully, I feel that there are many things hidden in this work, especially the theory of parallel worlds that Chen mentioned to me before. Maybe what you said is right, but this work doesn't have what you said at all. Aida pointed out the shortcomings of the work. I don't mean to target you, Yoshida-kun. But look at this work. The storyboards are handled in a mess in many places, and the main plot is very confusing. The coexistence mode of multiple protagonists is difficult to grasp in a novel, let alone a comic. I know everything you said, Ongda. Yoshida looked at Ongda with a cold face, but you have to believe in Chen. Everyone here has read his previous works. Do you think Chen can handle it? Aren't you okay with these questions? Just like in Destiny Note, didn't you all think there were too many characters at first? But what happened? Yoshida, give me the manga. Seeing the argument gradually escalate, the editor finally spoke. Manga is something created by the author's heart. We cannot make an easy decision, maybe a random decision. Whether the manga is interesting or not, you'll only know if you read it yourself. After hearing what the editor said, Yoshida and Aida stopped arguing and nodded at the same time. The entire conference room became quiet, and the only sound that could be heard was the editor's flipping of the manuscript. Yoshida, this comic is a bit confusing, and the storyline is very ordinary, but... The editor pushed up his glasses. Some parts of it are still very interesting. So, I think you should. Well, the problem now is, how did you tell Aiken? Yoshida walked to the door of Makoto Takahashi's house. His mind was filled with what the editor-in-chief said at the serialization meeting, and his face was tangled. I don't know how will Chen be so angry that he stops drawing comics, huh? Oh, my beloved cat, when you encounter something that cannot be solved, do you need to summon the Demon King? Makoto Takahashi's twitchy voice came from the other end of the phone. Oh, 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 you are really incompetent. Servant. But not now. I am fighting an elite revenge banshee, and I cannot escape from the battle for the time being. We will meet at the save point of the hot spring square in 20 minutes. Of course, if I don't show up, it means I have already sacrificed my life. At that time, please carry on my legacy and protect Konoha Ninja Village. Takahashi Makoto. Yoshida resisted the idea of hanging up the phone, and said with a cold voice and gritted teeth, I'll wait for you in front of your house. Beep, beep. Makoto Takahashi simply hung up the phone. Makoto Takahashi said it was 20 minutes, but by the time Yoshida saw Makoto Takahashi, it was already 2 hours later. Facing Yoshida, who was full of anger and had begun to enter the verge of blackness, Takahashi Makoto scratched his head with a blank look on his face, raised his thumb, and showed what he thought was a bright smile. Ahaha, I'm sorry, my beloved cat, I just got lost on the road called life. Humph, I hope you can still laugh later. Yoshida took a deep breath, turned around and followed Takahashi Makoto into the room. Looking at the manga manuscript that Yoshida put on the table, Takahashi Makoto showed a trace of doubt in his eyes, took it in his hand and looked at it carefully. But Yoshida didn't speak, but quietly observed Takahashi Makoto's expression. After a long time, Makoto Takahashi posted the manga manuscript on the table. The smile on his face gradually faded, he lowered his head and began to think seriously about something. So, you can't do this. Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi, who was deep in thought, and began to persuade him. The serialization meeting was not passed. This kind of thing is normal. Don't have negative emotions because of such trivial matters. You know, you are the master of the Phoenix Academy and a cartoonist. So what? Makoto Takahashi raised his head and looked at Yoshida. The serialization meeting was not passed. This matter, well, it was already in my expectation. The evil eye of the demon god had already foreshadowed everything that would happen. Yoshida did not find a series of negative expressions such as sadness, loss, or depression on Takahashi Makoto's face, and became a little confused. You already knew that this work would not pass the serialization meeting? Chen, don't force yourself to smile when you face setbacks. Men, it's just a failure once or twice, it's normal. After failure, just stand up again and keep moving forward. Do a good job drawing Full Metal Alchemist. After all, everyone has given high praise to this comic. So, what are you thinking about, my beloved cat? Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with a smile on his face. That kind of special term to comfort a bereaved dog, don't underestimate it. How brave the Demon King is. Besides, have you ever seen a Demon King who wants to destroy the world with only a simple plan? Tisk, you are so naive. Chen, you. Yoshida suddenly found that he was taking it for granted. The comic didn't pass the serialization meeting. Don't you feel unwilling to do so? Not willing? Maybe. Makoto Takahashi rubbed his temples and sighed with an unhappy look on his face. I originally wanted to save some trouble, but now it seems that it still doesn't work. By the way, this was when I was writing fan fiction. Is this a habit left behind? Is this considered retribution? The sins of the previous life should not be underestimated. I expected that you would be hit by this, but it seems that I thought too much. In short, for now, just draw Full Metal Alchemist well. Yoshida was completely confused by the words he didn't understand. Choosing to ignore it, don't think about the new serialization for now. Since the first set of combat plans doesn't work, then let's turn to the second set of combat plans, Makoto Takahashi said with a smirk on his face. Then, my beloved cat, I will make an exception this time for you to see. A king-like existence. This is. Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi taking out the manga manuscript from the drawer, and cold sweat broke out on his head. Isn't it another manga manuscript prepared for a new series? Stop making trouble. For the previous work, I was too anxious. If the parallel theory cannot be accepted by readers, I don't know when my king will appear. But now I encounter such a thing, it goes against my plan. Maybe I think too much. Makoto Takahashi put the manga manuscript on the table. A trace of regret flashed across his face. Since it's now time, it's time for you to see the so-called king of duelists. What a king! I said, are you sure this is your new work? Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi with a gloomy face. Are you just kidding me? This is obviously the work you painted before. Okay. It's just that you deleted some characters. Exactly. In fact, this is the true face of this comic. Makoto Takahashi raised his hand. Sacrifice despair in exchange for the light of hope. Come out, When the Higurashi cries. Yoshida picked up the comic manuscript and flipped through it, his face getting worse and worse, and finally he was overwhelmed, threw the comic manuscript on the table, and roared loudly, "I won't comment on whether this comic is interesting or not, you first tell me, since when the chilling cry is a separate story, why didn't you draw it like this at the beginning and instead add some unnecessary things to it? Do you know that for the previous work, I was working on it? Let's argue hard at the serialization meeting." "That's what you should do," Makoto Takahashi sneered, "my beloved is a cat, can't you see? This is the Demon King's test for you. If you can't complete the Demon King's test, then how to become a loyal underground servant? Trial? It's a lie, it's definitely a lie." Yoshida looked very angry. "You must have heard me say before that the development of the story was a bit messy, and then you changed it like this. Is this the way you speak to the Demon King? Who do you think you are?" Makoto Takahashi turned his head away, not daring to face Yoshida, and stammered, This is just something I suddenly remembered. This. Then why did I work so hard before?" Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi and sat weakly on the ground. "Are you sure you want to submit this to the serialization meeting? Since you had this plan from the beginning, then why do we still need to take some detours?" The wisdom of mortals. Makoto Takahashi clasped his hands together, sat on the sofa with his feet crossed, and said with a sacred look, "All of this is prepared to welcome my king. The existence of the parallel world is to ensure that our king the conditions for birth. But if you want to challenge the existence of God, it is not enough for you to be the king. In order to create a relatively fair battlefield, I will keep trying and training, whether it is integrating the world or integrating the plot, until I can master these mysteries. I will welcome my king's arrival." "It's exactly what the editor-in-chief said." Yoshida pointed at the manga manuscript. "You really chose this story. The editor-in-chief told me at that time that if conditions permit, Chen, you really want to start a new serial, instead of spending time drawing stories that you don't want to close, you should work more seriously to draw interesting stories. This is what the editor asked me to convey to you after reading the works you submitted before. I see, the commander-in-chief has wisdom that I, a servant, do not have. He can actually perceive my thoughts. It seems that my previous idea that I could completely defeat the world with the help of the Golden Finger was too naive." Takahashi Makoto completely ignored Yoshida, who was on the verge of exploding, and began to declare loudly, "But it doesn't matter, now let Higurashi when they cry become the vanguard of the counterattack and become a sharp blade to penetrate the army of the Black Flame King Crows. Ha 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 ha. Ah Chen, I'm curious, the king you keep talking about." Looking at Takahashi Makoto, who was in a certain state, Yoshida asked curiously, "Who is it?" "The king's real name is not something that a servant like you can inquire at will." Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida with a cold expression. "Wait quietly. When the horn of the god-slaying war sounds, my king will surely come to the world." A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 62. Has the serialization meeting passed? Makoto Takahashi listened to Yoshida's good news on the phone. His tone was extremely calm. "Is this kind of thing worth making you so happy?" "I'm not happy. The serialization has been passed, of course." "Ah. That's it. I'm still using the orange staff at Sacred Heart Academy. My companion is the cat. You'd better say goodbye to the novice village and enter the main city." Makoto Takahashi hung up the phone with a happy expression on his face. What makes Takahashi Makoto happy is not that Higurashi no Time was serialized, but that no one, including Yoshida and the editor-in-chief, noticed the darkness of Higurashi no Time. The dark-style comic drawn by Makoto Takahashi had another purpose besides revenge on disgusting people. It is to give people a psychological preparation in advance for future comic creation. If a person living in a peaceful society is suddenly asked to participate in a war, let him take his life, and let him watch the death of life. His heart may not be able to bear it, but once this person has experienced the baptism of war, he can already faced with the loss of life, when he is allowed to deprive his enemy of his life, perhaps he can already accept it in his heart. The heart to accept killing is the difference between veterans and recruits. If Takahashi Makoto had submitted when the Higurashi cries to the serialization meeting from the beginning, everyone in the editorial department would definitely not have been able to accept it. After all, the dark story is quite unique among the many royal and passionate comics. There's no need to even think about serialization or anything like that. But for Makoto Takahashi, who already has a criminal record, the current Higurashi time is much better than the previous comics. At least the feeling of oppressive darkness is much less than that of previous works, which is why many editors can accept it. What's more, Makoto Takahashi is very kind and did not draw the scene where Kiyaki tortured Reina and Mian with a baseball bat at the beginning. He only drew a shadow of swiping the bat and hitting them. Who would have thought that the scene at the beginning could this seemingly normal behavior be the foreshadowing behind it? Moreover, the Onigaku submitted by Makoto Takahashi for the serialization meeting only has 3 chapters and does not tell the entire story. The manga only showed Kiyaki noticing the bad intentions of the people around him and feeling the conspiracy, and then it disappeared. Like some famous detectives, he throws out a lot of clues, and then suddenly pauses deliberately when he is about to point out the murderer. Although this method is very exciting, it can arouse people's curiosity even more. Oh, now that the serialization has been confirmed, what to do next? Makoto Takahashi looked at the cover of Shounen Jump on the table. It was the male protagonist of Eiji Niizuma's Crow with a look on his face. The expectant smile, it's the east wind waiting for victory. A fire will directly burn up the Black Flame Army. In the same city, the new wife Eiji, who was drawing comics, couldn't help but frown a little, and suddenly felt a chill. Ah, Takahashi Makoto, have you finally returned from the demon world? I thought you had died in the Devil's Cave. Izumi looked at Makoto Takahashi, who had not come to class for a long time, with a flash in his eyes. Guangliang smiled like a little fox. Hey, it seems that you are doing well in the devil world. You don't look very embarrassed. Humph. Of course, the Demon King went to the demon realm just to go back to his hometown. Makoto Takahashi looked at Izumi's side with squinted eyes and smiled, and asked with some confusion, by the way, why is the side of the magician sitting here with me, by my side? Don't you remember it anymore? Izumi looked at Makoto Takahashi with some disappointment. After the 2nd grade of high school was reclassified, my seat will be next to yours. Are you really an inspector from the magic side? Makoto Takahashi looked at Izumi with a sure face. I sent you to monitor me specifically because we had an intersection before, right? Don't think that I will show mercy to those I know well. I am the Demon King. Yes, yes. Izumi smiled. So, Lord Demon King, in order to celebrate your victory, do you want to go to the game arcade together later? Well, this. Makoto Takahashi showed a tangled look. Because of the issue of serializing 2 comics at the same time became a little tight. After thinking about it, Takahashi Makoto still shook his head helplessly and refused. Let's forget it. After all, the Demon King still has to look like the Demon King, and for games and stuff, this period of time is still. It's such a pity. Quan Zifang spread his hands. Then I'll go with Xiaojing and the others. I heard that a batch of new works have come recently, which sounds very interesting. Makoto Takahashi looked at Izumi Fang, who was gradually going away, with a trace of pain and regret on his face. When Makoto Takahashi returned home with a disappointed look on his face, he found a man sitting at the door, looking around nervously, his body still trembling, and he kept knocking on Makoto Takahashi's door. Isn't this a little sea otter? Makoto Takahashi walked over, looked at the nervous little sea otter, and asked with some confusion, what happened? You look a little panicked, you are being chased kill. Well, yes, Mr. Phoenix Academy, The little sea otter suddenly grabbed Takahashi Makoto's shoulders tightly. I was running away from the Yoshida family, and I first thought of coming to you. Please save me. Mr. Yoshida, are you talking about my cat? Takahashi Makoto looked at the little otter who had collapsed on the ground, but his hands were tightly grasping his trouser legs, and a strange smile appeared on his face. Little otter, you came to me rashly like this, aren't you worried that I am in the same group with him? The little otter looked at Takahashi Makoto with horror, his face turned pale with fear, and he temporarily lost the ability to speak. You are really timid, little otter. Takahashi Makoto shook his head helplessly, and stretched out his hand to gently rub the little otter's head. You can't be so timid, little otter. When facing my cat, you must muster up your courage and directly use a friendship-breaking fist. Of course, you can also buy some soap and throw the soap away when you see him. Looking at the little otter taking out a notebook from his body and taking notes seriously, Takahashi Makoto nodded with satisfaction. The little otter toy seemed very interesting. Why not play with it for a while and then return it to my cat? Come on, little otter, come in with me. The weird smile on Makoto Takahashi's face was not seen by the little otter. But the little otter could feel that the half-open door of Makoto Takahashi's house was like a beast with a bloody mouth, ready to devour him. The little otter had social barriers, so he had few friends, and he had just started serializing, so he didn't know many cartoonists, so Yoshida didn't have much effort, and he brought a few cartoon assistants to find Makoto Takahashi. Ah-Cheng, is Hiramaru here with you? Yoshida knocked on the door, but his face showed a positive look. Hiramaru, come out quickly and go back with me, don't affect Ah-Cheng's cartooning, you should go back to paint. Yoshida didn't finish his words, and the door opened. The assistants behind Yoshida looked at each other, but Yoshida had an expression of as expected, and entered the room without hesitation. The assistants looked at each other, exchanged glances, and followed Yoshida into Makoto Takahashi's home. Ah-Cheng, these people are Hiramaru-kun's assistants. Your assistant will be here tomorrow. Looking at Takahashi Makoto sitting on the sofa, Yoshida introduced him to Takahashi Makoto. Looking around, by the way, where is Hiramaru-kun? Didn't you call me before and tell me that Hiramaru-kun is with you? My cat, you started asking questions as soon as you came in. Is this what a guest should do? Takahashi Makoto complained with some dissatisfaction. It's really rude. Hey, the guy over there, hurry up and serve tea to the guests. A person with a mask on his face and wearing a maid outfit, trembling with a plate, slowly walked to Yoshida and put the tea on the table. Yoshida was still looking for the little otter and took the tea and drank it. As expected of Mr. Feng Guangaiyuan, a deep male voice suddenly came out of the maid's mouth. Mr. Yoshida, you really didn't find it. I wonder if everything that follows will be as the teacher expected. Puff. The tea in Yoshida's mouth sprayed all over the floor. He looked at the maid with her face covered in disbelief and cried out, You are Mr. Hiramaru. Why did Mr. Yoshida know? The little otter looked at Yoshida in surprise, quickly hid behind Takahashi Makoto, and began to complain. Mr. Feng Guangaiyuan clearly said that it would not be discovered. The IQ of a toy, don't expect too much. Takahashi Makoto hugged Liulai and gently rubbed the kitten's head. Don't you think so, Liulai-chan? Meow. Liulai stared at Takahashi Makoto with her ember eyes. Meow. I'm glad you understand. Takahashi Makoto was completely immersed in the communication with Liulai. Don't become a toy like the little otter. By the way, Liulai-chan, remember to stay away from that humanoid creature over there. The existence called my cat companion seems to have entered a special period recently. Don't run around at night, it's very dangerous. Why are you dressed like this, Hiramaru-kun? Yoshida looked at the little otter in the maid outfit, and black lines appeared on his head. You haven't been to this extent, have you? But Feng Guangaiyuan teacher said. The little otter looked at Takahashi Makoto, and was encouraged by the other party, and immediately raised his tone, "If you want to find a girlfriend, you must understand women." Ha 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 ha. Takahashi Makoto covered his stomach and laughed wildly. "You really said it? You are worthy of being a little otter. Since you have done it, then the stupid Demon King will keep his word. When Her Royal Highness the Princess comes next time, I will ask her to introduce you to some beautiful big sisters." Long live Feng Guangai Yuan teacher. The little otter was so excited that he forgot everything and started cheering. Yoshida on the side shook his head somewhat helplessly, looking at the little otter with an idiotic look, but seeing the little otter cheering and jumping for joy, Yoshida's face slowly showed a devilish smile. "Ahem, here American." Yoshida glanced at Takahashi Makoto, conveying some information with his eyes. After seeing Takahashi Makoto nod, Yoshida continued to fool the little otter, "As long as you draw comics well, what Aiken said will come true. And let me tell you one thing, the Princess Aiken is talking about is the popular star Rina Ogata." "Star? Hee hee." Yoshida, who was caught in some delusion, began to shake his body. After coming to his senses, he promised Yoshida with a serious face, "Mr. Yoshida, from today on, I will draw comics seriously." "Yeah," Yoshida hugged the little sea otter and said happily, "Then, let's go back." Yoshida walked to the door and suddenly looked back at Takahashi Makoto. He found that Takahashi Makoto was also looking at him. He quietly raised his thumb and nodded with a smile. "Hee hee." Takahashi Makoto took out a camera from the bookcase next to him and smiled. "Thanks to the little sea otter toy, I got new materials. Alas, as a Demon King, I have such a kind and helpful heart. I am really incompetent." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 63. Because of the healing work when the Higurashi cries appeared, Makoto Takahashi decided to use a new version of the story for Full Metal Alchemist, which is the FA version. Full Metal Alchemist has been serialized to the 8th episode. The Edward brothers obtained information about the Philosopher's Stone from Dr. Malcolm and began to search in the library, hoping to find the Philosopher's Stone. How to make the Stone of Death to restore the body. The last issue of Full Metal Alchemist happened to be serialized at this point. Many readers are curious about what the raw material of the Philosopher's Stone is. After the new serialization of this issue was published, many readers couldn't wait to read it. When I reached the published page of Full Metal Alchemist, I verified my thoughts accurately. Research on demons is something that cannot be pursued. In the comic, Edward had a gloomy look on his face and knocked on the floor angrily. "That's cruel, Mr. Marco. I will definitely hate you for the rest of my life." The materials used to make the Philosopher's Stone are living people. Edward covered his mouth, his face turned pale, and continued to talk about the shocking facts, and to refine a Philosopher's Stone, more people need to be sacrificed. Life. When many readers read this paragraph, they suddenly felt a chill in their backs. When we saw Dr. Marco take out a small piece of the Philosopher's Stone in the last issue, many readers didn't take it seriously, and Marco also said that it was an incomplete Philosopher's Stone, which made Brother Edward happy for nothing. It also made some readers very unhappy. The thing you are looking for is right in front of you. When you reach out to get it, the other person tells you that this is not complete. Not only does it take it back, but it also tells you that even if I know how to make this thing, I will not tell you. Not to mention Brother Edward, many readers felt that Dr. Mal was a bit immoral. Even if Brother Edward was given a hint later, it would still be difficult to eliminate the reader's resentment. But after seeing this issue of the comic, especially after many readers learned how to make the Philosopher's Stone, they have some complicated feelings for Marco. After learning the truth, I suddenly felt that what Marco did at the beginning was entirely to protect Brother Edward. You are worthy of being a teacher from the Phoenix Academy. The uncle owner of a supermarket had a feeling of admiration after just reading the beginning. In every work, the portrayal of human nature is indeed better than many. The cartoonist is very clever. In Destiny Note, the uncle boss watched Yagamayu slowly transform from the best student in the country to Kira, and in the end he even began to proclaim himself a god. From the beginning, Yagami just wanted to get rid of the criminals and build a utopian world. However, after using the Death Note to take the lives of many people, Yagami gradually began to lose his way. Perhaps because of the rebellious period, Yashinayu cannot tolerate the existence of anyone who disobeys her. From the beginning when Yagami used the notebook without any selfish intention, to later on when he started killing lives wantonly, the changes in his heart changed little by little. Just like after suddenly gaining superpowers, many people will act recklessly and even claim to be gods, but they have forgotten the fact that they are still human beings. As for Lelich in Lelich of the Rebellion, the boss couldn't help but sigh when he thought about it. Although like Yagamayu, Lelich also intends to create a utopian world, but the method used is different. In the later stages of the manga, Yagamayu has forgotten the fact that he is a human being after all, but Lelich has always insisted on his own ideas and fought hard. It's not that Yagamayu is inferior to Lelich, it's just that the two of them chose different methods and have different ideological consciousness. Yagamayu has become a ruthless demon king in the later stage, but Lelich's final performance still maintains human thoughts. But in Full Metal Alchemist, what the uncle boss saw was a depiction that was closer to life. The Edward brothers made mistakes out of ignorance and did not choose to forget about escaping and retreating. Instead, they shouldered the pain and moved forward silently. Even though they knew that the road ahead was tortuous and bizarre, they never stopped. When Brother Edward learned how to make the Philosopher's Stone, the uncle boss did not continue to read the comics. Instead, he began to think about it in another person's shoes. What would he do if he were in his shoes? Should I choose to use the Philosopher's Stone selfishly to restore my body without conscience, or should I give up the hope that I have already obtained and continue to explore unknown methods? The middle-aged uncle, who still had trouble making a decision after thinking about it, looked at it curiously. He had a hunch that Brother Edward would probably give up using the Philosopher's Stone to restore his body. Cheng's painting skills have improved a lot. Lan Dai put down the comic in his hand and looked at his good partner Huang Mao glasses with a blank expression. Hey, Kairan, what do you think? Regarding the plot of the story? I have to admire that Chuyuni Cheng, the yellow-haired glasses man, pushed up the glasses on his face and pointed at the comics. I don't know much about drawing, but the development of this story really makes me it feels uncomfortable to read it in one sitting. And what's even more amazing is, Cheng's ability to construct a story. Story building ability. Lan Dai looked at his partner with some confusion. As you can see, I was thinking before that the characters who had appeared before were the three people with tattoos and the scarred man. If those people were just minor supporting roles, why did Ah Cheng give close-up shots? The man with yellow hair and glasses looked at the more confused Lan Dai, sighed, and changed his explanation method. Hey, Supreme, have you noticed that the story development of Full Metal Alchemist has already laid a lot of foreshadowing? Although it seems to be just some scenes at present, maybe in the future, these foreshadowings will play a very incredible effect. Akito, is it still time to sigh now? Lan Dai closed one eye. Since it has started serialization, we must work hard. Hurry up and conceive a new storyboard. The performance of Suspect Detective Trap has begun to decline recently. If it goes on like this, it will be difficult to animate it. Okay, looking at Lan Dai, who was in a trance state, the man with yellow hair and glasses couldn't help but smile embarrassedly. He knew that Lan Dai must be thinking about Yadu now. Makoto Takahashi, who has become the subject of discussion, is now drawing a story that was difficult to accept in his previous life, the death of Lieutenant Colonel Moss Hughes. This middle-aged uncle who did not appear often in the previous life loved his daughter and wife very much. He often took out photos of his daughter in the army to show his colleagues. Roy Mustang often complained about Hughes's show of affection. But it was because Hughes loved his family too much that he could not kill envy when he saw that the appearance of the android Envy had become his wife, giving Envy an opportunity to kill Hughes. Although I have seen it no less than 10 times, I still find it difficult to accept the death of Uncle Hughes. Makoto Takahashi looked at the finished draft with a lonely face. This feeling had appeared before. When L died, and when Lelich was stabbed by Suzaku, I had this feeling before. Speaking of which, those authors in the previous life must have endured a lot of resentment, right? Takahashi Makoto looked at the sky covered with dark clouds outside the window, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Now I am the one who draws these comics, so these resentments will be borne by me this time. Alas, this is also an equal exchange, right? Looking at the vibrating mobile phone on the table, Takahashi Makoto did not answer the call, but closed his eyes and leaned back in the chair to rest slowly. Takahashi Makoto knew that it was Yoshida who called, but he was in a low mood and didn't want to talk to anyone, so he deliberately turned a blind eye. But Takahashi Makoto thought too naively. Soon the door was knocked violently. Yoshida's voice sounded a little noisy, which made Takahashi Makoto annoyed and planned to continue to ignore it. It's a pity that Takahashi Makoto underestimated Yoshida's persistence. My cat, you are really persistent. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida, whose hands were a little red, and couldn't help but sigh. I deliberately added a layer of iron plate on the door before, but I didn't expect you didn't notice it and still insisted on knocking on the door for 15 minutes. Congratulations on your achievement, congratulations. I'll discuss the door with you later. Yoshida looked gloomy and looked at Makoto Takahashi with dissatisfaction. Didn't I tell you before? I will bring my assistant to you, but you have stood me up several times. The Demon King never raises pigeons, but only tames dark dragons. Takahashi Makoto shook his head and looked at Yoshida innocently. Besides, I have to go to Sacred Heart College to brush dungeons every day, and make guides when I come back at night. I am so busy that I vomit blood every day. My cat, you, a servant, not only don't help, but also keep complaining you are really bad. Brush dungeons, make guides, don't treat daily classes and comics as games. Yoshida's mouth twitched. Ah-chan, have you started to become a otaku? You are just a Chuyunibu, don't become a Chuyunibu otaku. Hee. The two girls behind Yoshida suddenly laughed, interrupting their conversation. Oh, my beloved cat, have you sent a new sacrifice? Takahashi Makoto showed what he thought was a ferocious smile. It seems that this sacrifice is not bad. In this case, I can satisfy half of your wishes. Money, women, status. Tell me, my beloved cat, what do you need? Ahem. Feeling that the two girls behind him were looking at him with some unfriendly eyes, Yoshida coughed awkwardly. As you can see, this is Mr. Howinkuma, his real name is Takahashi Makoto. Although he is a genius cartoonist, he is a complete Chuyunibu patient. Tisk tisk tisk, my beloved cat, did you miss something? Takahashi Makoto looked at the two girls behind Yoshida. A man, his face turned a little cold. I am the Lord Demon from the abyss of love and healing. Foolish human, remember this moment. Being able to witness the Lord Demon's demeanor will be something you will be proud of for the rest of your life. Haha, it's just as Mr. Yoshida said. The male assistant smiled slightly and walked to Takahashi Makoto. Hello, Mr. Fengguangai Yuan, my name is. Name? That kind of thing is not necessary. Takahashi Makoto looked up at the man who was a head taller than him, looked him up and down, and nodded with satisfaction. Yoshi, you are good. From today on, you will become the Lord Demon's fourth subordinate. The name, let's call it Ding Ding. Eh? Does Mr. Fengguangai Yuan know me? The male assistant smiled shyly. My last name is Ding, and my given name is also Ding. Ahahaha, the evil eye of the devil can predict the future. Takahashi Makoto smiled awkwardly, gave a thumbs up and praised, I have to say, your name is very thoughtful, come and destroy the world with me. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 64. After adding 3 new assistants, Takahashi Makoto finally felt a lot more relaxed. Lee Binjian and Ueno Aoi continued to be in charge of the manga Full Metal Alchemist. After Miss Shang Guanyu left, the two had also worked in this way. In addition, after Takahashi Makoto took the initiative to share some of the work, the 3 of them were still able to maintain the speed of drawing. The 3 new assistants are responsible for Higurashi When They Cry. The reason why the new assistants took over this manga is that this manga will only start serialization next week, plus Takahashi Makoto has drawn 3 episodes in advance, the 3 of them have a lot of time to buffer and run in. Speaking of Mr. Howin, this Higurashi When They Cry feels a little. Ding Ding looked at the content that Takahashi Makoto had drawn before, frowned tightly, hesitated for a long time, and chose to tell the truth. I have carefully read the content of the first 3 chapters of this comic, and I am a little confused about many places. Although it looks like a daily college comic, can such a comic really be serialized in Shonen Jump? As a subordinate of the devil, there is no need to worry about such negative emotions. Takahashi Makoto stopped the brush in his hand. This comic has passed the serialization meeting. This comic, the story of the painting, is somewhat similar to the comics of the 2 gay duo next door, both of which unfold the plot with small stories. Huh? Are there 2 cartoonists living next door? Hearing this news, the 3 new assistants were all surprised. Who are they? Just arrogant and rude people. Takahashi Makoto's face suddenly became a little ugly, and he began to mutter, next time they come to eat for free, I must let them experience Princess Rina's hell cuisine. At lunch, the shameless freeloader duo next door appeared, not just the 2 of them, but also brought 3 assistants with them. Seeing this situation, Takahashi Makoto's mouth twitched constantly, and he wanted to pick up the kitchen knife in his hand and make barbecued pork buns out of the 2 people who were laughing happily. Hey, Chang, we're here again. The man with yellow hair and glasses greeted him in a friendly manner, looked at the people in the room, and became a little confused. It seems that you have added a few more people here. Akito, instead of talking about this, you might as well think about the new story, Landai complained with a tired face. By the way, Shuyuni-chan, can't you move faster? We have an appointment with the editor to discuss comics at 3 p.m., and time is very tight. Humph. I hope you can still laugh later. Takahashi Cheng snorted coldly, put the food on the table, and sneered, Landai, this is food specially prepared for you. Remember this taste of happiness, and then struggle painfully in the abyss of blood. The 3 new assistants were a little shy at first, but under the food made by Takahashi Cheng's super chef level, shyness were completely discarded, becoming captives of food, among which Ding Ding was even more brutal and turned into a glutton, sweeping away the food. Well, thank you for the treat. After eating, Landai pulled the yellow-haired man with glasses to leave, but was stopped by Takahashi Makoto. Your suspect detective trap seems to be a little bad recently, Takahashi Makoto said sinisterly, and the 2 of them stopped. And Takahashi Makoto seemed to be not satisfied, and continued, well, by the way, let me tell you again, this Demon King has used a new treasure. Higurashi When They Cry is a very powerful work. Higurashi When They Cry. Landai was a little confused at first, but he reacted in an instant. His face was a little ugly. Shuyuni Makoto, are you going to create a new series? Tisk tisk tisk, it's not creation, but it's already prepared for serialization. Takahashi Makoto looked at Landai, are you surprised? This is the strength of this demon god. By the way, Higurashi When They Cry is similar to your comic, both of which are based on the story of being alone, but what? The yellow-haired man with glasses looked a little solemn, staring at Takahashi Makoto. "Ah-chan, what else do you want to say?" "Okay, the question and answer time is over," Takahashi Makoto ordered everyone to leave. "Let the comics decide the specifics. This is what a duelist should do." After Yachin Mumenjai and the others left with their assistants, Takahashi Makoto took out some storyboards from the drawer and handed them to the three assistants who were drawing Higurashi when they cry. "This is the content of the fourth episode," Takahashi Makoto smiled expectantly. "This is a very loving work. As for the content of the fifth episode, I will tell you after you finish reading it first." The three people headed by Ding Ding gathered together and began to look at the comic manuscript. Takahashi Makoto sat beside them, looking at the expressions of the three people seriously, with an expectant smile on his face. If Yoshida were here, he would be able to detect how bad the smile contained. "Ah!" the two female assistants screamed, and although Ding Ding did not scream, his face was very ugly. "How is it? It's interesting, right?" Takahashi Makoto looked up and found that the page of drawings the three of them saw was the picture of Kiyaki wielding a baseball bat violently. "Well, you'll get used to it slowly. What's more, this is just the beginning. Teacher Feng Guangai, is there really no problem with such a work?" Ding Ding was the first to calm down. "I had doubts before, but as the plot develops, such a result will occur. Although it is a bit unexpected, it is reasonable. But with the death of the male protagonist, how can this work continue? It is impossible for him to be resurrected again. As expected of a magical name, Ding Ding, your intuition is unexpectedly sharp." Takahashi Makoto looked at Ding Ding and praised him generously. "That's right, in the fifth episode, the male protagonist will be resurrected. And not only the male protagonist will be resurrected, but other characters will be resurrected. The new story will start again, and as for what the result will be, with your intuition, feel free to find it yourself." "But such a story?" Tintin was still a little entangled. "Not many people can understand it, right? Even if you plan to explain it clearly later, can this comic last until then without being cut off?" "Tintin, you don't know how broad this world is." Takahashi Makoto looked at Tintin with regret, and began to sigh. "I am the Demon King who masters the truth of this world, and everything is as planned. What you have to do is to abide by the contract with the Demon King and work hard for the Demon King's plan to destroy the world." Although he said so, Takahashi Makoto heard the implication of Tintin and was not optimistic about this work. Higurashi When They Cry is actually a very large story structure. It is difficult to tell the story completely with just one ghost story. Just like many games, it is often necessary to open up multiple branches to reach the final plot. Higurashi When They Cry is the same. Only after several tragic reincarnations can the final plot be reached, and the story will slowly come to light. "But, so what?" Takahashi Makoto looked at his assistants who were studying the composition carefully, and smiled confidently. "I am the overlord who will rule the world, the devil of healing and love." Ahahaha. Ashiro Mumenjai returned to the studio, and both of them had uneasy looks on their faces. "Hey, Supreme, what do you think of what Ashiro said?" After a moment of silence, the man with yellow hair and glasses still asked, "Can we beat him?" "Akito, your style of writing stories is somewhat similar to Ashiro's, but you are not the same person after all, so the stories you create must be different. For Ashiro's new series, since it has passed the serialization meeting, it means that the editors think that work is very interesting." Landai's eyes flickered, "But even so, we must win. For that promise, the promise with a do. Akito, you just need to think about the story." Landai walked to the drawing table and picked up the paintbrush. "Leave the painting to me." To be honest, Akito's story is very exciting. The gap now is in the painting. "Gazi, have you had a good rest recently?" The man with yellow glasses looked at Landai and asked worriedly. "Don't force yourself too much." "Well, I know, Landai said perfunctorily and then began to bury his head in painting. Although he was a little tired, he was full of fighting spirit at this moment. Time passed like this, and the new issue of Shonen Jump was released. Huh, Higurashi when they cry. There is a new series. Maida Ken flipped through the comics in his hand and was extremely surprised. Oh my god, it's actually the new work of Hao Winkuma. Wait, can't Full Metal Alchemist be cut off? Maida Ken continued to flip through the comics and found that Full Metal Alchemist was still serialized. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. After all, he really liked this comic. Especially for the protagonist Edward, Ken Maida has a special liking for Edward because he is not tall. Let's take a look at the new work of Feng Guangai Yuan for now. Holding the idea of enjoying good things to the end, Ken Maida opened Higurashi. There are so many girls. Is it another comic of Crystal Palace? By the way, has Feng Guangai Yuan finally fallen to this point? Unfortunately, it is not at all what Ken Maida thought. Although this work only describes the daily life of a small mountain village at the beginning, there is always an inexplicable sense of depression. As the comics gradually unfolded, Ken Maida felt a chill. Especially when Ken Maida saw the scene where Rina secretly watched Kiyaki on the phone with the police officer, he felt a chill behind him, as if he had become Kiyaki and someone was secretly watching him. Ken Maida looked back suddenly and found that there was only a wall behind him. Then he remembered that he was at home and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. But the fear of being watched by others, Ken Maida could never erase it from his heart. Ken Maida gently wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. His expression was extremely complicated. He wanted to read on, but he was a little scared. After a long time, Ken Maida couldn't help his curiosity and continued to read. Although Ken Maida felt that Higurashi was somewhat inappropriate to appear in Shonen Jump, for him who has been reading mainstream comics for a long time, the appearance of this work has aroused unexpected interest. There are many readers like Ken Maida, and as for the results that Higurashi can achieve, it is not yet foreseeable. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 65. 8 types of seals are superimposed, and the 6 methods have no form and no results. In my name, the barrier is opened. Takahashi Makoto, who completely ignored the strange looks from others, was making various complicated gestures in front of the train door and mumbling something. The train cooperated well with Makoto Takahashi's spells and movements, and the door slowly opened. On the side, Yoshida covered his face and pretended not to recognize Takahashi Makoto. Have you seen it? My beloved cat, this is the inherent skill of the Demon King, the absolute pressure of the Demon King. Makoto Takahashi proudly walked out of the tram door. What are you doing with your lips turned on? Don't you dare to look directly? Hey, despite the name they are my pets, but they are just mortal bones after all. At this time, I should complain about Cheng. Are you very accurate in calculating the opening time of the tram? Yoshida looked a little ugly. Are you heartless or heartless? The cry of the cicada. The results of the first 2 chapters of She are not what you expected at the beginning. If it continues like this, it will probably be cut in half soon. This is no problem. When the next issue of Shonen Jump is released, you will know how great the Demon King is. Makoto Takahashi walked forward with a nonchalant expression, but he stopped when he saw a familiar figure. Pace. I really don't know what you think. In Full Metal Alchemist, Hughes was killed, and he was a very loving uncle character. Although Hughes didn't appear too much in the previous chapters, but you actually have the heart to destroy such a happy family. How immoral it is. Yoshida did not notice Takahashi Makoto's actions, but complained with a look of dissatisfaction, and the characters in Higurashi were destroyed. I'm already in despair. I shouldn't have submitted it to the serialization conference at that time. This is the first time in a manga that the male protagonist gets a lunch. You are simply seeking death, Makoto Takahashi. Hush. Makoto Takahashi stopped Yoshida and signaled to whisper. then pointed to someone who was on the phone over there, with an expectant look on his face. "Shut up. A good show is about to begin over there. I don't want to, although I also want to see Yadu's photo album, but I don't want others to see it. I want it all to myself," the young boy yelled loudly at the phone. Listening to Landai's unscrupulous declaration, Takahashi Cheng raised a smile, slowly walked behind Landai, and said hello in a friendly manner. Landai looked at Makoto Takahashi and Yoshida, who were smiling, and was instantly petrified. Just now, I was too excited and completely trapped in my own world. If I actually said that, I would probably be regarded as, "Okay, where is the nearest time machine?" Don't worry. The time machine is hidden in the drawer of my house." And Makoto Takahashi seemed to see through Landai's inner thoughts and patted him on the shoulder comfortingly. Compared to the direct confrontation before, the girl said she wants to get married. "You seem to have broken through another bottleneck this time. Maybe next time you can play the game of ghost whip and wax dripping. Anyway, young man, congratulations on your being on the road of non-humanity. It has evolved again, which is gratifying. Landai opened his mouth several times to say something, but in the end he let out a long sigh, knowing that he could not explain it clearly. He turned around and sent a text message and walked out of the station. As for the time machine mentioned by Takahashi Makoto, Landai expressed that he was not interested at all. "By the way, why are you following us?" Landai met up with his friends. After walking for a while, he finally turned around unhappily and asked Yoshida and Takahashi Makoto, "And where did your bicycles come from?" "Hey, have you been discovered?" Makoto Takahashi curled his lips in displeasure. "Since we have been discovered, let's decide the outcome. My beloved cat, the decision is yours, go ahead. Use electric light dodge, get the first blood." Cheng left the bicycle at the station. "We are going to Cheng's house now to discuss the comics." Yoshida became furious when he mentioned this. Before, because of Hiromaro-kun's incident, the supervision of Cheng was relaxed. "I didn't expect this guy to do such a crazy thing." Landai, the yellow-haired glasses gentleman, and, well, the family members seemed to sense Yoshida's anger when they saw him, and did not respond, waiting for Yoshida's next explanation. "Damn it, you actually rebelled on the spot." "As expected, my familiar cat who has been kept outside the pokeball for a long time has reached the stage of rebellion." Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida talking endlessly about himself, feeling a little depressed. "As expected, Pai Shen is just a wise man. My exclusive treasure. Although I recovered a little sea otter before, haven't my cats finally returned home? It seems like they have to be tortured by wild elves once before they will listen to their trainers. Although I can't tell you the specific situation, you will know it when you read the next issue of Shonen Jump." Yoshida looked at the three people who were still confused and sighed helplessly. Having said that, if the manga is cut in half, it will still be somewhat unhappy. "My beloved cat, why do you keep talking about being cut in half?" Makoto Takahashi was a little unhappy. "You underestimated the existence of the three miracles, which are divine objects that can shake the roots of the world." "Humph, now that I have been cut off so many times, I will be careful not to get slapped in the face in the future. I plan to go back to my hometown to get married after I finish painting when the cicadas cry." Seeing Makoto Takahashi suddenly turn pale and remain silent, Yoshida was a little confused. "What's going on? During the war with the King of Black Flame, I actually said that I would go back to my hometown to get married. What a mistake. Oops. This feeling is, yes, I have already felt the hostility of this world towards me." Gao Qiaocheng suddenly looked around, looking for something, and then looked at Yoshida with a serious face. "My beloved cat, please take good care of my safety recently. How is such a thing possible?" Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi with a look of disbelief. "That kind of plot only happens in novels. By the way, have you been in contact with Rina-chan recently?" It seems like you've been working very hard on drawing recently and haven't had time to date. Let's go out and have a good rest with Rina-chan after you finish these two comics. That's enough, don't say any more. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida, wishing he could kill him with a sword. My beloved cat, are you putting a curse on me? Humph, the people around me, I can testify that if the Demon King's plan fails in the future, it will all be caused by your foolish actions today. Aiken Mumenjai and Miyanyoshi looked at the two people who were involved in the dispute and left quietly. Today is the day when Shounen Jump is released. After Ken Maeda bought it home for the first time, he did not rush to read it as usual. Instead, he slowly calmed his breathing and flipped through the magazine with trembling hands. After Full Metal Alchemist, which he had been watching, he turned directly to When the Cicada Cries. Although I don't like this kind of comics very much, I am very curious about the story. Ken Maeda began to encourage himself. I just want to see what happened to the serial murders and disappearances mentioned in the comics. Well, that's right, that's it. When Ken Maeda watched Officer Oishi talking to Kiyaki, they talked about Rina's past, and he slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Because from the conversation between the two, Ken Maeda has already regarded Reina as a mental patient, so in the comics, Reina's occasional weird behavior can be dealt with normally. By the way, the introduction to this comic said that it is a healing comic. As a reader, Ken Maeda began to think about the plot behind it. It must be like this. Through the contact between the male protagonist and the female protagonist, the story is revealed. Let's start with the dark history of the heroine, and then complete the ending of love and reunion. But there are also many other female characters, so there won't be a bloody plot like polyamory, right? Maeda-ken likes to guess the development of comics like this. If you can guess the ending, it proves that you are not bad. If you can't guess it, it doesn't matter, because it is very happy for readers to see an unexpected story. However, Maeda-ken has overlooked one issue, that is, the author, Makoto Takahashi, who has recently awakened the personality of the Great Demon King. So when Ken Maeda saw Kiyaki almost eating a rice ball with a needle inside, he broke into a cold sweat. This male protagonist still wants to save Reina? Are you kidding me? I almost got killed. Kei was almost hit by a car along the way. Oishi mentioned the story of the God of God many times, as well as Hojo Satoru, who had transferred to another school and was suspected of missing. The tense atmosphere began to spread. Although he was a little scared, Maeda-ken still insisted on reading because he felt that his previous guess was completely wrong, and the development of the story would not turn out as he thought anyway. Huh? How could it be gone? Ken Maeda was very depressed. It was obviously at a critical moment. Why did it suddenly stop? We have to wait for another week. It's really, forget it, let's watch Steel the Alchemist to lighten your mood. Implanted memory. This issue is about the conflict between the Edward brothers. Edward has been feeling guilty in his heart, because his brother lost his body due to the human body refining and became a being who cannot eat, drink, or sleep. He has always had unspeakable guilt in his heart, but Al was because of his previous relationship with Barry. During the conversation, he had doubts about his true existence and suspected that he was created by his brother. For this reason, the two brothers had a fierce conflict. Although I have read the content of this chapter, I still feel that something is wrong with the title. Ken Maeda looked at the title with some confusion. The content of this chapter tells about the relationship between the Edward brothers, but this Hughes the uncle has appeared a lot. But this uncle is really interesting. His daughter is only 3 years old. When he sees her holding hands with other little boys, he pulls out a gun and threatens her. Haha, is this the legendary daughter controller? By the way, I will have a daughter in the future. If so. Ken Maeda looked at this paragraph with a smile on his face, but the Phoenix Academy is really awesome. The world set in the manga is obviously a very cruel world, but it is still there. Uncle Hughes is such a good man, and Alicia is so happy to have such a father. I really hope to see more stories about Uncle Hughes. If Yoshida were around, he would definitely look at Ken Maeda with sympathy, because he had had such thoughts before. However, they have all been destroyed. Makoto Takahashi, the evil Demon King, destroyed everything to pieces. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 66. How many days is this? Makoto Takahashi shook his head, rubbed his sore eyes, and looked at the drawings piled up on the table. The soreness in his shoulder made it impossible to hold the brush in his right hand. Cheng, take a rest. The speaker was Lee Byung-yin, who also had dark circles under his eyes. He advised Takahashi Cheng with some worry, you haven't slept for 3 days. If you continue to draw, your body will be damaged. I won't be able to bear it. It's just 3 days without sleep, don't worry. The Demon King's body is not as fragile as the human body. Makoto Takahashi pushed away Lee Byung-yin's hand and slapped his cheek hard, trying to wake himself up. Once again picked up the brush with his trembling right hand. I also want to rest. But my body always refuses to obey. Brother Music, don't you hear it? That cry from the soul, keep painting. I still want to keep drawing, but this sound keeps making noise and can't stop. The Demon King's awakening mode, starts again. Watching Makoto Takahashi start painting again, Lee Byung-yin helplessly shook his head to the other assistants, indicating that there was nothing he could do. By the way, why is Cheng like this? Ueno Aoi asked with a yawn. Although I have been here as an assistant for a long time, this is the first time I have seen Cheng work so hard. Perhaps you are not willing to give in, right? Cheng had high expectations before, but... Ding Ding also put down the brush and stretched. After the release of the 4th episode of When the Cicada Cries, many readers called the editorial department to complain, and the ranking in the readers' survey dropped directly to 15th place, almost being cut in half. However, Fullmetal Alchemist made many readers dissatisfied because of Hughes's death, and its ranking dropped directly to the 5th place. Number 7. Now is not the time to talk about this. Lee Byung-yin looked at Makoto Takahashi, who was immersed in painting, frowning tightly. The most important thing now is to let Cheng stop painting and take a good rest. At this time, I think we should contact Mr. Yoshida. Maybe Mr. Yoshida can persuade Cheng. Ding Ding glanced at Cheng Takahashi helplessly. If we continue like this, let alone Cheng's body can't bear it, it's almost unbearable. Although I really want to complain about Aiken's speed of painting, the quality of each drawing has not deteriorated. Is this the so-called genius? It's not a genius, it's the Demon King, Makoto Takahashi replied without looking back, throwing aside the comic manuscript on the table. Little Tintin, if you have time to complain, you might as well get to work quickly. Yes, yes. Ding Ding stood up dizzily, staggered to Takahashi Makoto's side, picked up the comic manuscript, and read the content of the comic casually. This time it's hanging. Have you completed the content of another chapter? In addition to the previous steel refining, it has been completed. No, Takahashi Makoto's house was wailing. The assistants were already in despair, and they all looked at Lee Byung-yin with twinkling eyes. Lee Byung-jin shook his head silently, picked up his cell phone to signal, walked to the balcony, and went to call Yoshida. I'll go for it. Tintin wanted to forcefully interrupt Makoto Takahashi's Demon King awakening mode, but was stopped by Aoi Ueno. You'd better not do this. Aoi Ueno glanced at Makoto Takahashi secretly and explained in a low voice, Cheng doesn't like to be interrupted by others when he is drawing. The last time Mr. Yoshida came over, it was because I interrupted Cheng's painting, and then... What happened? Ding Ding looked at Ueno Aoi's pale face and couldn't help but become curious. You won't be thrown over the shoulder by Cheng, right? Haha, Eh? What does your expression mean? It's just a throw over the shoulder. When Aoi seemed to have remembered something terrible, with a look of horror in her eyes, Cheng tied Yashida up last time, and then. Xiaoquei, you seem to be very idle. Makoto Takahashi suddenly jumped up from his chair, holding two comic manuscripts with his thumb and index finger. Look, a new job is here again. Are you talking in low voices because you want to overthrow the rule of the great Demon King? When Aoi shook her head hurriedly, her face a little unnatural, I just compliment Cheng that you draw so fast. Oh? Really? Sure enough, after the cat queen of my family, you all ushered in the rebellious period. Your subordinates started to rebel constantly. This is the plot of the development of the devil's story. Takahashi Makoto showed a dangerous look on his face, smiling. Okay. According to the routine of some novels, I will give you ignorant common people a chance to challenge the Demon King. I happen to be a little tired from painting, how about we go out for some exercise? Half an hour later, Yashida arrived at Makoto Takahashi's home. Yashida is indeed a little dissatisfied with Takahashi Makoto's insistent approach before. But after hearing Lee Byungyan say that Takahashi Makoto painted without sleep for 3 days, Yashida felt a little guilty. I have forgotten that Aiken, this guy, has been developing smoothly in comics since his debut. It seems that he has not encountered any difficulties. This time he suddenly encountered a setback. Maybe he can't accept it for a while, Yashida said on the side, thinking about how to comfort Takahashi Makoto later. He knocked on Takahashi Makoto's door. Is my companion a cat? Hey, it came so fast, Makoto Takahashi complained with some dissatisfaction, coming from the room. Yashida opened the door and heard Makoto Takahashi's unscrupulous laughter. Ha 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 ha, common people, do you feel the greatness of the Demon King? Then continue working, this is the punishment for the loser. What's going on? Yashida entered the room, looked at the listless assistants, and looked at the energetic Takahashi Makoto with some confusion. What did you do, Cheng? Well, there are so many manga manuscripts. Humph. Common people, who allows you to break into the Demon King's palace without permission? Makoto Takahashi looked at Yashida coldly. Even though you are my beloved cat, it is a serious crime to offend the majesty of the Demon King, and it is a death penalty. My beloved cat, have you written your suicide note? You're finally here, Mr. Yashida. Lee Byungyan looked at the confused Yashida with a saved expression on his face, and then continued to explain to Yashida very quickly, there was no call on the phone just now. Tell me clearly, the specific situation is this. Cheng, Yashida walked up to Takahashi Makoto with a serious face, bent down, and apologized in a sincere tone. I'm really sorry. I was too impatient before. When I spoke that day, a little too excited. Huh? Did you misunderstand something? Makoto Takahashi looked at Yashida's strange behavior, with a strange smile on his face. Do you think that the temporary failure of the 2 comics this time made the unwillingness in my body explode, and then start painting in a masochistic way? Do you want to numb yourself? Isn't it? Yashida looked at Makoto Takahashi with an affirmative look on his face. If this weren't the case, I can't think of any other reason for you to do this. So that's it, am I being underestimated? Makoto Takahashi sighed in a low voice at first, then his tone suddenly changed and his voice raised an octave. Huh? You ignorant common people actually underestimated the Demon King. It's such an unforgivable crime. Yashida, the fundamental reason why I did this is still on you. Then I sincerely apologize again. Yashida had already given up. Seeing Makoto Takahashi's face soften a little, he asked, but I still want to know why the cause is on me. Do you still remember everything that happened that day? Makoto Takahashi said almost through gritted teeth, staring at Yashida with hatred in his eyes. My beloved cat, do you know how many times you cursed me that day? Did I curse you? Yashida looked at Makoto Takahashi with some confusion. It seems not. It was just that you insisted on not wanting to modify the manga that day, and then we had a dispute. It seems that I didn't curse you. Besides, a curse like this supernatural thing, does the phenomenon really exist? When I got home that day, the spare red and blue potions were stolen by Ogata Slime's minions. Then when I went to the administrator to replenish the red and blue potions, I was inexplicably involved in a fight between the gangsters. Although the group of bastards who tried to provoke the Demon King were suppressed with strong force, the gems used to replenish the red and blue potion trade were unfortunately lost when he went to the vault to take out the spare gems. He was involved in the robbery again and became a kidnapper. Takahashi Chen became more and more angry, and his voice became louder and louder. Do you think this is all over? No, this is just the beginning. I finally managed to escape, and then I was stuck in the elevator. I spent 3 hours waiting for rescue. When I got home, I was told that due to the renovation of the upstairs, water leaked from the roof, and the cartoon I had drawn before was completely invalid. It's really unfortunate, Yoshida sighed after listening to Takahashi Makoto's exaggerated experiences, but he was a little doubtful about their authenticity. Although I really want to say this, but are you sure that these things you encountered are all really? Why didn't I hear about the bank robbery? Because I drew the fugitive and gave it to the police. They said it should be kept secret to avoid overstimulating the murderer and causing bad things to happen. Makoto Takahashi rolled his eyes. By the way, I didn't tell the police uncle my name, I just told them, my name is Red Scarf. So Chen, the reason why you are painting so hard is... Cold sweat broke out on Yoshida's head, and he was afraid to look directly into Takahashi Makoto's angry eyes. Oh, there's nothing we can do about it, Makoto Takahashi sighed. I already felt an ominous premonition, so I worked hard to draw. If I don't defeat the King of Black Flame before I die, I will definitely. I'm very unwilling, and I might die in peace. These things you mentioned will basically never happen. You are worrying too much. Yoshida wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and complained in a low voice, and I really want to know, attacking a person who can be pierced with a wooden sword, who is the monster on the wall? I have been possessed by Kamijo-sama recently, and my luck value has dropped directly to negative values. But why haven't I obtained the other attributes of a pickup guy? This is not scientific at all, Makoto Takahashi suddenly complained helplessly. Sure enough, cartoonists have to wait until they die to become famous. Huh. That mysterious creature with wings and a silly grin, is it really you, Suke? If you don't take a good rest, are you already hallucinating? Yoshida winked at Ding Ding and Lee Binjian, and the three of them threw Takahashi Cheng on the bed. Cheng, you should have a good rest now. What are you doing? Huh. Takahashi Makoto lay on the bed, and before he could finish his words, he fell asleep, petrifying Yoshida and the others. A middle school cartoonist author, Mao Sde Mao. Chapter 67. Yang Tao is a die-hard Phoenix Academy fan. He really likes the Phoenix Academy's murderous works. However, recently, he doesn't like the Phoenix Academy's works. It's all because of hanging. Han Cicada hasn't been cut in half yet. Yang Tao looked at the newly released Sun Junk with a little disappointment on his face. After the male protagonist killed the heroine and the female supporting role, they were all dead. This comic still has How Can We Continue? Really, what is Phoenix House painting about? What does Myanlio Chapter 1 jealousy mean? Wait, there's something wrong with this. With a hint of curiosity, Yang Tao couldn't help but look through the pages, and just looking at them, he became more confused. Aren't people like Kiyaki and Reina already dead? Why are you alive again? Could it be that Kiyaki was dreaming? During Kiyaki's club activities, he gave the prize doll to Reina, and later Metchin, who claimed to be Mian's twin sister, and became friends. This is the first chapter of the Myanlio arc. It did not explain the reason for everyone's resurrection, but instead seemed to start a new story from scratch. This development made Yang Tao look at it in a daze. completely confused. Why does this seem to be completely incompatible with the previous content? After reading the content of this issue, Yang Tao scratched his head helplessly. Forget it, let's ask everyone online. After all, there are people smarter than me. There must be a lot of people. When Yang Tao looked online, he was immediately dumbfounded. Many people were discussing the plot of Hansekata. After a random search, the most common words he saw were "can't understand" and "completely incomprehensible." When Yang Tao was a little depressed, he suddenly found a post pinned to the top. The title was "My Opinion on Hansekata." The poster was Muya Yang, a senior anime reviewer. Concerning the recent serialization of Phoenix Academy's new work, When the Cicada Cries, I believe many people find it difficult to understand, right? I was the same at the beginning. Muya Yang's post had very little nonsense and was straightforward from the beginning. Going to the topic, especially in the fourth episode, the protagonist Kiyaki died, and the suspected heroine Rina died. It was basically a total annihilation. I was very confused at the time and didn't know what the Phoenix Academy wanted to express, but after reading this new issue of the comic, I have guessed something. If there is anything wrong, please give me some advice. I don't know if you have noticed that the first 4 chapters of Higurashi have a title attached to them, the Ghost Hidden chapter. And the new content this time is the Myanlio chapter. So the characters in the story will be resurrected. Then just because this is a new story, if you want to understand the content of this chapter, you have to forget what you have read before. This style is actually the same as Detective and the Detective that is being serialized at the same time. The Detective is all based on a single story. Sure enough, the greatness of the Phoenix Academy is beyond the imagination of those of us. When Yang Tao saw this, he already understood. The same characters, but different stories happened. This kind of development is really what a surprise. Then what I want to say next is about the plot. Yang Tao continued to read the post, and suddenly he was looking forward to the next chapter of Hansekata. He obviously hoped that this comic would be cut in half before, but I started to look forward to it again. In the Jealousy chapter, after seeing this name and the character Xian who appears later, I can roughly guess some of the developments of the plot. Of course, if I find something wrong later, please forgive me. I guess these chapters are the key points of the story. On these twin sisters. The subsequent development may become a love triangle, but if it goes according to the development of the previous ghost story, it is estimated that Kiyaki will die in the end. As for the murderer, he is one of the 2 sisters. Who? I don't know about this. In short, this comic unfolds in an unconventional way, so it's normal for people to not understand it at first. I also read it many times before I got this idea. After Yang Tao read it, a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. Finally, he picked up the previous comics and began to read them carefully. As Muya Yang said on the internet, if you look closely, there are still many things hidden in the comics. These foreshadowings were not explained clearly in the Union chapter, but in the Myanlio chapter, there are more. The character Shin. The more Yang Tao looked, the more surprised he became. There were many details that he had not noticed when he looked at them before. No, if such a comic is cut in half, then I will definitely be troubled for the rest of my life. Yang Tao closed the comic and began to fill in the reader survey. This comic cannot be cut in half, it must be serialized. Come on, Phoenix Academy. There are many readers who hold this idea. After reading Muya Yang's analysis, many readers began to use their own ways to support the murderous nature of the Phoenix Academy. Am I blinded? Yoshida looked at the statistical report in his hand with a look of disbelief on his face. Why did the ranking rise so much all of a sudden? It's a bit unscientific. After the 5th episode of Higurashi was published, Yoshida was already prepared to be cut in half. After all, it was very reluctant to pass the serialization meeting last time. Yoshida has already thought about it. If Higurashi is cut in half, he will persuade Takahashi Makoto to paint steel. But why did the ranking of Higurashi increase so much after the release of this issue of Shonen Jump? Has Chen known this result all along? Yoshida was a little confused, but this kind of confidence is really... Hey, my familiar cat, what are you doing here so early? The twitchy smile on Makoto Takahashi's face made Yoshida angry and helpless. Don't say that the manga manuscript is lost, that way I'll let you see the real hell. What are you thinking about? Yoshida rolled his eyes. Hurry up, the best you can do with the animation company today is to choose the voice actor for the dubbing. Oh, has the promised date arrived? Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with some surprise. I didn't expect that the animation could be completed in just 1 month. Sure enough, the people who rule this world are all non-human beings. What are you thinking about? Yoshida interrupted Makoto Takahashi's delusion without hesitation. I just finished the first 3 episodes. I finished an animation in 1 month, did you really wake up? Hey. Is laziness really the fundamental nature of human beings? Makoto Takahashi curled his lips in displeasure. The future of mankind will be to perish because of laziness. Please don't plan the future of mankind casually. Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi with some displeasure. As a human being, is this really okay for you to say? Humans. Humph, my beloved cat, please don't classify the Demon King and the inferior monkeys as the same kind. Makoto Takahashi looked at the bicycle next to Yoshida with doubts on his face. The Demon King is going on an expedition without the Chaos Emperor Dragon as his mount. Forget it, but what's going on? Do you still have the nerve to say it? Yoshida heard what Takahashi Makoto said, and was touched by the sad past, and his emotions became a little out of control. What kind of bastard was he? He yelled in the car and made me just the car I bought. My beloved cat, have you started to recall the past? Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with some regret. Tisk, 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 you know, recalling the past on the battlefield means that you will die in the near future. Although as an unqualified pet, I regret that you did not upgrade to a diligent existence before you died, but I will definitely forget you, so go on your way with peace of mind. Yoshida remained silent, suddenly speeding up, trying to get rid of Makoto Takahashi, but all this was in vain. You are really weak, my beloved cat. Makoto Takahashi looked a little dissatisfied. Looking at Yoshida, who was breathing heavily, he accused him without sympathy. Your fighting power is not as good as the existence of a slime. Is it really just a cannon fodder? Oh, my beloved cat, one day, the Demon King will rule the world. At that time, can you still keep up with the Demon King? You know, the Demon King has nothing. Sympathy and pity will not hesitate to abandon the existence of the weak. Yoshida slowly adjusted his breathing. Instead of spending time arguing with Makoto Takahashi, it would be better to take a good rest. Daiheshi is an old animation production company and a partner of Urongshi. Nearly 60% of the manga animation for Shonen Jump was completed by Taigasa. Makoto Takahashi also chose to cooperate with this company under Yoshida's persuasion. Speaking of Chen, what exactly is in your backpack? Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi beside him, looking at the backpack with some doubts. Could it be some prohibited items in it? You know, Daihi Club has a very strict policy. There are many things that cannot be brought into the security check. Huh, Makoto Takahashi just snorted and didn't say anything. The receptionist of Daihi Club was a tall beauty. Unfortunately, Makoto Takahashi was now very concerned about the quality of animation and completely ignored the beauty. Instead, he kept urging Yoshida to walk faster, which made Yoshida very dissatisfied. Taigasa is very serious about animation production. At least in Takahashi Makoto's opinion, the precision of the pictures is much higher than that in the previous life. Makoto Takahashi was very satisfied with this, and then under Yoshida's frightened eyes, he took out a pair of black-rimmed glasses and put them on. Chen, why are you wearing glasses? Yoshida's face turned pale and he asked uneasily, "It seems we are not here to negotiate today, right?" "You're worrying too much, Mr. Yoshida." Makoto Takahashi pushed up his glasses, showed a professional smile, and bowed gracefully. "Wearing glasses is just a habit. I think there are some limitations to animation. The problem needs to be explained, and, I met a friend I know over there, and I just want to help her." A beautiful girl was holding a script and reciting it carefully, without noticing the gaze of Makoto Takahashi. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 68. "Oh, I didn't expect that the person in charge of reception this time would be you. I was really rude last time." After entering the conference room, Takahashi Makoto looked at the man who was looking through the documents. After being surprised, he bowed slightly. "Long time no see, Mr. Chen Ben." This man named Chen Ben also wore black-framed glasses and had a handsome appearance. There was a teardrop mole under the left corner of his eye. He always kept a kind and friendly smile on his face, but his eyes were cold and indifferent. From the temperament point of view, when many people first met Chen Ben, they would have a feeling that this person is the legendary social elite or successful person. For the identification of professions, the first choice must be a lawyer or prosecutor. "It's been a long time since we last met, Takahashi Makoto." Chen Ben put down the documents in his hand, with a confident smile on his face. "No, I should call you Mr. Howinkuma now, I think it's more appropriate." "No, I'm just Takahashi Makoto now." Takahashi Makoto smiled and shook his head. "Howinkuma is just a cartoonist. For business matters, everything is exclusively represented by Takahashi Makoto. I've always heard that Ogasa has strong strength in animation production. Although I haven't seen it now, since it can make talents like Mr. Chen Ben willing to serve as a receptionist, I think Ogasa's strength is indeed as unfathomable as the rumors say." "Thank you for your praise, Mr. Takahashi Makoto." Chen Ben just smiled and accepted Takahashi Makoto's evaluation, without exaggerating the strength of Ogasa, nor pretending to be modest. Everything was very natural. Chen Ben pushed his glasses. The smile on his face did not change at all. "Trouble Fengguangai Yuan." "No, Mr. Takahashi Makoto, you came to my company in your busy schedule. What I have to do next is, although I have seen some parts before, I still want to see the finished animation now." Takahashi Makoto interrupted Chen Ben without hesitation. A trace of vigilance flashed in his eyes. Every parent has a sense of responsibility for their children, and they don't want them to make the wrong friends and go astray. This Chen Ben is really sharp-tongued. Deliberately called the wrong name. Chen Ben couldn't make such a mistake. Takahashi Makoto looked at Chen Ben, who didn't change his expression, and began to sneer in his heart, "Reminding me that Fengguangai Yuan is just a cartoonist, so he shouldn't have any say in the production of animation? Well, this way please." Chen Ben made an invitation gesture and walked towards the internal preview room with Makoto Takahashi and Yoshida. "Regarding the selection of voice actors, I hope Mr. Makoto Takahashi can give me some advice. After all, cartoonists are much more accurate in grasping the character's personality than production staff." This Makoto Takahashi is still as vigilant as before. Chen Ben turned around, raised the corners of his mouth, and the smile on his face became a little cold. He was not satisfied with the previously played trailer, but compared the comics to his own children. Was this a test to doubt the strength of the Oga Society? Yoshida listened to the brief conversation between Makoto Takahashi and Chen Ben, and couldn't interrupt at all. The conversation between the two was obviously a very polite greeting, but it sounded like a fierce battle. Looking at the two people walking side by side beside him, Yoshida seemed to be able to feel the hostility between the two. Are these fateful enemies? But then again, Makoto Takahashi wearing glasses seems. My beloved cat, were you thinking that glasses are my true self? Makoto Takahashi suddenly turned his head and looked at Yoshida, with an ambiguous smile on his face. but you guessed wrong. After wearing glasses, most of the magic power is sealed. In exchange for absolute rationality, this is the ability of the sealed treasure mysterious glasses. By the way, although I can't use most of my strength now, I can still use mind reading and other things freely, so, you know. Mr. Makoto Takahashi is still as funny as before. Chenben stopped and bowed slightly. Then, about the animation, let's talk about it in detail after watching the finished product produced by our company. It doesn't take long to watch 3 complete episodes of animation, but Makoto Takahashi is very depressed while satisfied. Because in addition to the high-quality picture quality, there is nothing like character dubbing and music. I wonder if Mr. Takahashi Makoto is satisfied. Chenben looked at Takahashi Makoto with a smile on his face, his tone full of pride and confidence. Dehesha is a company with a long history. In terms of animation production, although it is not the best in the world, it is also one of the best in the whole East continent, and even the whole Central continent, so don't doubt the strength of Dehesha anymore, right? Is this showing off? Or provocation? However, being able to produce animations with such picture quality does have the qualifications to say such things. In that case, let's talk about the issue of voice actors and music. Takahashi Makoto looked at the smile on Chenben's face. Although he was a little unwilling, he also knew in his heart that it was not advisable to make trouble without reason, so he decisively changed the topic. Which one should we talk about first? After recognizing the quality of the animation, he didn't mess around or make trouble unreasonably, but instead pointed out the music problems to the point. After a moment of silence, Chenben looked at Makoto Takahashi, who was also smiling, with a hint of expectation on his face. Then let's talk about music. I believe Mr. Makoto Takahashi is ready for this issue, right? After all, I also received an invitation to the Sacred Heart Academy's school festival, haha. The strength of Daihi Club is indeed well deserved, Makoto Takahashi praised while giving Yoshida a fierce look. You can know the elegant meaning by listening to the strings, and in the communication between smart people, you don't have to put everything on the table, just click on it. Hearing Chenben mention the school festival, Takahashi Makoto knew what he meant. Was the information really leaked from the editorial department? But Chenben, do you underestimate me, Makoto Takahashi? There is no problem with the music, so let's talk about the voice actors. Makoto Takahashi pushed up his glasses. Of course, I won't interfere too much with your agency regarding the selection of candidates, but I prefer animation. It meets my expectations. Of course, Chenben looked at Makoto Takahashi and raised the corner of his mouth. However, regarding Lelich's dubbing, the company hopes. I'm just a cartoonist, and I don't have enough time to draw cartoons every day, so don't think about dubbing or anything like that. Makoto Takahashi had a headache when Chenben mentioned this, because this is the first time we're collaborating together. It's very difficult for both parties to meet each other. It's necessary. If we establish a long-term cooperative relationship, I think it won't be as troublesome as this time, right? That's such a pity. After listening to the recording provided by Mr. Yoshida, many people thought that Mr. Takahashi Makoto's voice was very suitable for Lelich. Even though he said this, a glimmer of light flashed in Chenben's eyes. Although the animation rights for Rebellion were previously obtained, another work by Makoto Takahashi, DN, was not obtained. The fundamental purpose of Chenben's reception today was still to obtain the animation rights for DN Superior. The 3 of them came to the cubicle of the recording room. Makoto Takahashi had a smile on his face, because he happened to meet an acquaintance. This girl, we want her to dub the heroine. Chenben seemed to have noticed something and muttered to himself in a low voice. Mastress, is it CC? Makoto Takahashi frowned and refused decisively. No, this girl's voice is not suitable for a queen. Mr. Chenben, can you let me make a call? Please feel free to do so. This will not affect the recording. Chenben looked at Makoto Takahashi with some confusion. Do you need to turn off the sound temporarily? No need. Makoto Takahashi showed a smirk on his face, took out a pen and paper from his backpack, quickly wrote down a few lines, and handed it to Yoshida. My dependent cat, give this to the one inside girl, let her try reading this line. Although the queen is not suitable for her, I think this role should be fine, right? Yoshida glanced at the lines in his hand, with an awkward expression on his face, trying to explain something to Makoto Takahashi, but under the gaze of Makoto Takahashi's smiling eyes, he finally just sighed. He shouted and walked towards the girl who was dubbing. Mr. Chenben, I'm sorry. Can you let me make a call here? Although Takahashi Cheng said this, he was minding his own business and pressed the phone number. Then, I'll excuse you for a while. Chenben smiled, turned around and left. At the same time, Landai, who was working hard on painting in the studio, was startled by the sudden ringing of his cell phone. Could it be Yadu? Isn't she going to audition today? Did you pass the audition? With these thoughts in mind, Landai excitedly picked up the phone and saw that the caller ID was Makoto Takahashi, and he was a little disappointed. What's going on, Chen-er? Although he was a little confused as to why Takahashi Cheng called him, Landai still answered the phone. I'm painting now. If I call, what should I say? Challenge hard. Don't use middle-level common language like the Demon King's Demon King has not tasted human blood for a long time or the Demon King's demonic spear. Makoto Takahashi on the other side of the phone did not speak, but put the phone next to the speaker, while Yadu in the recording room read the lines with a red face. Please like me. In exchange, I will also like you very much. I like everything about you, your stubbornness, your tenderness, your sad eyes, your clumsiness, and the places that can be bitten by cats. Wait, this voice belongs to classmate Yadu. Listening to the voice coming from the other side of the phone, Landai's face turned red instantly and he exclaimed. The yellow-haired glasses gentleman and his assistants on the side, hearing Landai's exclamation, all stopped what they were doing and looked at Landai in confusion. Wahahahaha, you have heard it, Landai. Makoto Takahashi's sudden wild laughter made Landai depressed. Your goddess is by my side, trying to rescue the goddess who was kidnapped by the Demon King. Then put on Pegasus' holy clothes, break through the 12 palaces, and challenge the Demon King. Takahashi Makoto, you. Landai wanted to say something else, but he heard the phone was hung up. Has Cheng's comics been animated? Ado-san went to audition, and it turned out to be Cheng's animation. Cheng must have called on purpose, right? In other words, that line was designed for me? Landai realized it later, his eyes sparkled, and his face was filled with a happy smile. Although Chuyuni Cheng is annoying sometimes, he is still a good person. Go, was it Cheng who called just now? The yellow-haired man with glasses looked at Landai with curiosity. Why is it related to Ado-san again? Did something happen? Akito. Because of the skill support of Goddess's love, Landai was silent for a moment, and then his eyes burned with unparalleled fighting spirit. We must defeat Cheng. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 69. Recently, Rina's career has been going smoothly, but Rina is not happy. Because she is too busy recently, she has less and less time to meet with Makoto Takahashi. As for phone calls, they have even dropped from one call a day to one call a week. But in recent days, Rina's song recording has not been smooth. She has recorded many times but still cannot meet Ogata's requirements. Originally, according to Rina's level, recording these simple songs would not take too much time, but now. Hey, take a break, Rina, Ogata pushed his glasses to hide the disappointment in his eyes. What happened to you these days? I always feel that you seem to be a little absent-minded recently. When recording songs, you often lose focus. Sorry, brother, Rina lowered her head a little disappointedly, fiddling with the phone in her hand. Humph. It's because of that brat Takahashi Makoto. Seeing Rina's dejected look, Ogata frowned. Didn't you guys just call a few days ago? What did he say to you? It seems like you've been distracted since that day. Makoto called me and told me that he wrote some songs for the anime Code Geass, hoping that I could. Rina mentioned this with a forced smile on her face, but seeing Ogata's gloomy face, she immediately covered her mouth and lowered her head, not daring to speak. Tisk. That kid is really nosy, Ogata sighed and walked to Rina. Rina, I remember telling you before that as an artist of Ogata Agency, you should tell me first if you encounter such a thing. But it hasn't been decided yet. Rina looked up at her brother, and the song that Makoto mentioned was only sent to my mailbox this morning, and I haven't had time to see it yet. Oh? Did that kid write a new song again? Ogata showed a hint of expectation on his face, but he concealed it well. Take advantage of the break now, bring those songs here, let me see. Thank you, brother. Rina's expression eased a little when she heard her brother say this, and she hurriedly left the recording studio. Really? Looking at Rina's somewhat lost look, Ogata shook his head and complained unhappily, has this kind of performance reached the end of the relationship? Tisk, I really don't know what's so good about that kid. Ogata lit a cigarette and waited slowly in the recording room. After a while, he saw Rina walked in with a somewhat ugly face. Rina, what happened? Ogata looked at his sister's ugly expression with a curious look on his face. How did Rina, who was smiling just now, become like this now? It's okay, brother. Rina forced a smile and handed the lyrics and sheet music to Ogata. Just looking at the name of Makoto's song, I suddenly felt a little nervous. The day I shot my lover. Looking at the name, Ogata frowned a little. After a quick glance, Ogata was a little disappointed. There must be some illusion behind this song, right? But compared with the previous works, this song is much inferior. Makoto said that this song is the character song of Euphemia. Rina was worried that her brother didn't know, so she continued to explain, it's the Princess in Rebellion, eh? Oh, it turns out to be her character song. Ogata showed a look of realization. Well, combined with the comics of that kid, it is a very suitable song. But this level is a little bit. Ogata's words startled Rina and a smile appeared on her face. Although her brother always said that he hated Makoto, she didn't expect that such a brother would secretly read Makoto's comics. Is this what Makoto said, Tsundere? Brother, that. Rina hesitated for a long time, looking at Ogata timidly. Can I call Makoto? Looking at the name of this song, I always feel a little panic, as if something is going to happen. Rina, are you? Oh, forget it. Go make the call. Ogata waved his hand and looked at Rina with some depression. If I don't let you call, you probably won't be able to calm down and record the song, right? So, the existence of that kid will affect your development, which is really annoying. I'm very sorry, brother. Rina picked up the phone, glanced at Ogata, turned around and ran out, and promised Ogata while running, Rina promises that when I come back later, I will record the song well. Humph. Ogata snorted coldly, lowered his head and looked at the music score, his expression gloomy, as if he was thinking about something, mumbling in his mouth, constantly muttering something. Takahashi Makoto is still shrouded in the aura of misfortune as usual. The red and blue potions at home were once again looted by a foodie girl. Looks like we need to change to a more powerful barrier, Takahashi Makoto complained to Yoshida beside him as he walked towards the supermarket. That guy, ordinary barriers are completely useless. My beloved cat, should we poison the food? If we poison Icarus, it will probably be a lot easier. No, 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 poisoning may not work at all. With that woman's non-human body, the poison from the human world can't cause any effective damage at all. By the way, why can that guy break through so easily after we've changed the barrier? Chen, we just came out to buy things. Yoshida looked at the gloomy-looking Takahashi Makoto, and seemed to be able to feel the resentment lingering around Takahashi Makoto, and immediately changed the topic. Also, instead of spending time thinking about it, how to limit Iris, why not think about your comics? Now you may be far behind Shinzuma Eiji. Humph. Do you still need to think about this kind of thing? Makoto Takahashi pointed to his head. The content and so on are all here. I have already seen the outcome of this victory. The winner will definitely be I am the fierce demon king of the Phoenix Academy. Yes, yes. Yoshida responded perfunctorily to Makoto Takahashi, what do you want to buy? Well, we have purchased a lot of things. Makoto Takahashi took out a note from his backpack, the necessary items made from the human body need. Do you want to be swallowed by the truth? Yoshida snatched the note from Takahashi Makoto's hand, crumpled it into a ball and threw it into the trash can, and I really want to ask you, I just went to buy something, why are you so armed as if you are going to fight? It's not because of you. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida unhappily, and raised the wooden sword in his hand. It seems that your curse has taken effect recently, and the aura of doom has been upgraded from an anti-person treasure to an anti-realm one. The noble phantasm caused many things to go wrong. I just brought the wooden sword to deal with emergencies. By the way, the reason why the comics did not achieve good results was because of the influence of your curse. You, my beloved cat. Don't blame your own incompetence on others. Yoshida was too lazy to complain. Seeing Takahashi Makoto stop, Yoshida had a disdainful smile on his face. What's wrong? I have an ominous premonition again. Or are you aware of the approaching danger? I forgot to bring my wallet. Makoto Takahashi rummaged through his backpack carefully and sighed with some disappointment. Although I have a good relationship with the administrator, credit is not what the Demon King should do. I don't want to be a part-time working Demon King. And you, my beloved cat, look like a debt-ridden butler. You probably can't even afford a human-headed ice cream with all your money, right? Go back. Oh, what a pity. Hey, there's a banker over there. Watching Makoto Takahashi walking to the bank talking to himself, Yoshida kicked the railing on the side of the road hard. Oh, I'm calling at this time. Could it be that the Ogata slime elite is trying to bully my princess again? Makoto Takahashi looked at the name on the caller ID on the phone and answered the phone. Dear princess, do you have any instructions? Your devil will serve you piously. Chen-kun, I have received the song you wrote. Rina's tone was a little flustered. Chen-kun, how are you lately? I've always been a little uneasy in the past few days, and I dreamed about Chen-kun last night. You fell down covered in blood. My princess, you are so worried. Makoto Takahashi felt a chill in his heart for some reason after listening to Rina's words, but he still responded with a smile. Your Majesty, it seems that you have not mastered the great prophecy technique yet. Skills, right? If Her Majesty is free in the next 2 days, let's play games together. What do you think, such as beating Icarus or whipping Ogata Slime Elite? Haha, Chen-kun is talking about this again. Rina on the other side of the phone smiled, her tone sounded much more relaxed. Thank you, Chen-kun. I will cancel all activities tomorrow, and we will go to the park to play together. Bar. Well, this is okay. Makoto Takahashi walked into the bank and found a man who looked familiar. He blocked his way. He looked at the man carefully and his pupils shrank instantly. Maybe not tomorrow, Your Highness, because tomorrow I still want to practice. I understand, Chen-kun. Rina was a little disappointed. Then let's wait until Chen-kun is free. This. A black object that looked like a pistol was pressed against Takahashi Makoto's forehead. Takahashi Makoto still called with his expression unchanged, "I'm very sorry, Princess Rina. As your knight, it's really unqualified. Then, let's do this. Makoto-san." When Rina was about to say something else, Takahashi Makoto hung up the phone first. The moment the phone was hung up, Rina suddenly felt a chill and felt an inexplicable fear in her heart. "I didn't expect to meet you again, kid." A smile appeared on the man's face, and the pistol was pressed hard against Takahashi Makoto's head. "I wonder if you will be as lucky as last time this time." Oh, this is really." After hanging up the phone, Takahashi Makoto turned off the phone. Seeing the triumphant smile on the other party's face, Takahashi Makoto showed a surprised expression on his face. "This is truly a fateful reunion, Mr. Assassin at Large." A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 70. That's why I hate you robbing guys the most. You have no technical skills at all. Like the other hostages in the bank, they were all gathered together, squatting in the corner, watching the gun-toting leader escape. Mr. Assassin was directing the other two people to search, and murmured in a low voice, "Is it really because of the curse of my beloved cat? When will this life end? Alas, what a misfortune. People inside, listen, you are surrounded now." After a commotion outside, a deep voice rang out. "Brother, what should I do?" A robber held a pocket full of cash in his hand and looked at the gun-wielding leader uneasily. Although his face was covered, his tone of voice was trembling. "Humph. What are you afraid of? Do those guys dare to come in? I have hostages in my hands. If those cops don't care about the safety of these hostages, they can rush in and try." The gun leader fired a shot without fear. Many hostages screamed in surprise. A strange smile flashed in the eyes of the gun-wielding leader, and he changed the topic, "But in order to enhance the persuasiveness, you can release a few people out first. But those who want to go out must take off their clothes." "It's really too much fun," Makoto Takahashi sighed helplessly, but it attracted everyone's attention. "It's you little brat again. Humph, are you dissatisfied with my merciful behavior?" The gunman walked up to Takahashi Makoto and pointed his gun at Takahashi Makoto. "Or do you want to be the number one? Someone who takes off his clothes and goes out?" "Brother, do you know this kid?" A man with his face covered looked at Makoto Takahashi sitting on the ground with curiosity. "This kid's eyes are really annoying." "Humph," the gun-wielding leader snorted coldly, put his foot on Takahashi Makoto's stomach, and showed a ferocious smile on his face. "Thanks to this little brat, not only was the last operation messed up, but Long was also Tao and the others were caught. It sounds like they were destined, kid. I really want to know how you escaped this time. Is this really good?" Makoto Takahashi gently rubbed the place where he was kicked. There was no fear in his eyes as he looked up at the gun-wielding leader. "Do you know how the ghostly white-faced Professor Wiseman died? Is it because you talk too much, and when you can obviously win and destroy the protagonist's side, you still have to enter all kinds of memory killings, play all kinds of crazy games, talk a lot of nonsense, and then get angry with the protagonist? Or something like that, kill him and turn him into a scumbag?" "Kid, I changed my mind." The gun in the leader's hand was pressed against Takahashi Makoto's forehead. "Everyone else can get out, but you can't. Stay and be a hostage with peace of mind." "Humph. Have you felt it already? The hand holding the gun is trembling. Is it because the belief is wavering, or is it because of the uneasiness of failure, which creates fear?" Makoto Takahashi still looked at the leader indifferently and sneered. "Only when you have the consciousness to be shot will you be qualified to shoot. You bastard, do you have this consciousness? Awakening? Ha 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 ha." The leader suddenly laughed wildly, and the expression on his face became more ferocious. He slapped Takahashi Makoto on the face, and then kicked Takahashi Makoto hard several times. Many of the people who had become hostages had begun to cover their eyes, not daring to look any further. Kid, are you still talking about this when you are about to die? I just hate you self-righteous guys. Greed. Jealousy. Anger. A disdainful smile appeared on Makoto Takahashi's face, his eyes fixed on the other person's eyes. Human beings are the darkest existence in the world because they have accumulated too many negative emotions. But why? Evil people have weak hearts. Under the instigation of dark personalities, they become beasts dominated by resentment. They abandon themselves and lose themselves. This kind of mortal who pretends to be a powerful existence is just a bastard. You bastard. You are really arrogant, kid. The gun-wielding leader ignored Takahashi Makoto, but pulled out a few people from the ground and laughed confidently. After you take off your clothes, you can go out? Tell me. Those cops, if they dare to act rashly, they will have to bear the consequences. After all, I am already a wanted murderer, so it doesn't matter if I drag 1 or 2 people to hell before I die. Brother, I think it's better to change to a few men. A robber stared at a graceful female staff member and licked his lips maliciously. It's better to keep a few women. Being stared at by the robber with good intentions, the female staff member had a look of fear in her eyes. She looked at the people around her, trying to ask for help, but unfortunately, many people either lowered their heads or deliberately glanced to the side. Just when the female staff member was desperate, a man spoke. His voice attracted everyone's attention and temporarily rescued the female staff member. Even if Zeisui has awakened, can't he still change the nature of Zeisui? Makoto Takahashi wanted to stand up, but looking at the dark muzzle of the gun, after thinking about it, he still didn't get up, lowered his head and laughed. Now there are 2 more, arrogance, and, do you think you can summon the Chaos God by gathering the 7 deadly sins? You kid, what are you talking about? After another beating, the female staff member lowered her head guiltily and covered her eyes tightly with her hands. As a bastard, you have to have the consciousness of a bastard. How dare you let me look up to you? Makoto Takahashi raised his head and looked at the gun-wielding leader. This is not just 1 or 2 seppuku. Forgive the death penalty, you bastard. So, that look in your eyes is really annoying. The gun-wielding leader looked at Makoto Takahashi with some displeasure, took out a dagger from his waist, and under the exclamation of everyone, pointed it towards Gao Chiao. Chiao Cheng's face was split. It seems like you won't be honest if I don't show you some color. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Makoto Takahashi tilted his head back and narrowly avoided the opponent's fatal blow. His face became a little pale, but he still maintained a smile and looked at the opponent coldly. Sure enough, it is after being so angry, did he become a beast dominated by anger? Well, let me show you the true state of the Demon King. Should I say you are ignorant or stupid? A cruel smile appeared on the face of the gun leader. He held the gun in his right hand and pressed it against Takahashi Makoto's head. He raised the dagger high in his left hand again, preparing to strike hard again. The target is still Takahashi Makoto's face. Don't try to resist, kid. Do you want to save that woman? Yes. Since you want to be a hero, you must have already. The king and the devil are meeting here now. O turbulent and violent souls, let out a cry that shakes the world. Takahashi Makoto suddenly stood up, and quickly passed the opponent's gun hand with both hands, and twisted it fiercely. Direction, swastika. The world-destroying Demon King is coming. Out of a neurological reflex, the gun-wielding leader pulled the trigger in pain, but his left hand could no longer stop due to inertia. Gunshots rang out, accompanied by screams of terror, and the other 2 robbers were completely stunned. Hiss, it really hurts. You bastard. Seeing the gun-wielding leader with deformed fingers, falling to the ground and wailing with his hands in his hands, Takahashi Makoto showed a broken smile on his face and wiped his left hand. He looked at the blood on his left face and gently covered his abdomen. He played with the recently captured anti-personnel weapon pistol with his right hand, kicked the gun leader hard, stretched out his tongue and licked the blood on his lips. It's such a long-lost taste. Human blood is still as delicious as it was hundreds of years ago. You, don't come over. Seeing Takahashi Cheng holding a pistol with a malicious smile on his face, the two robbers took a few steps back in fear. We have the same thing in our hands. There is a gun. So what? Do you have the consciousness to shoot? Takahashi Makoto's body was already stained with blood. Like a demon liberated from hell, he raised the gun in his hand, with the muzzle between the two of them. Wandering, S.A., who is going to travel to hell next? You, I. The two robbers' momentary hesitation determined the outcome. Now, Makoto Takahashi suddenly shouted, "The reinforcements are left to you." Wushu and Wu. Before the two robbers could react, they were subdued by the hostages who suddenly appeared behind them. What a great job, reinforcements. You are the real dynasty warriors. Makoto Takahashi had just noticed the reinforcements quietly approaching the two of them, so he deliberately pointed his gun at each other to attract attention. Being able to seize this fleeting opportunity to carry out an attack, I have to say, is very strategic. What do you think? Do you want to become my subordinate and dominate the world with me? The two people who had just carried out the raid looked at each other and did not speak. Instead, they assisted others and tied up the three robbers. Hey, did the recruitment fail? Makoto Takahashi complained with some dissatisfaction. When he wanted to raise his left hand covering his abdomen, he saw the female employee walking towards him, frowned, and continued to cover her abdomen. Oh! Adjutant, what's the matter? Thank you very much for your life-saving grace. Although the female staff member still had some fear on her face, she still thanked Takahashi Makoto with a 90-degree bow. Don't get it wrong, common people. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida, who looked worried in the distance, with a relaxed expression on his face, and walked slowly towards the door of the bank without looking back. Demon King, maybe he was called a hero before. But once he becomes the Demon King, all he does is save the world just to destroy it again. So, the Demon King is just the Demon King after all. Cheng, it's okay, why is there so much blood on his face? Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi with a pale face and shouted anxiously, "Ambulance! Doctor! There are wounded here." Hey, it seems like it's already this time. Makoto Takahashi covered his abdomen and sat down slowly. My beloved cat, I'll leave the rest to you. If you really are, if you belong to a cat, you must become the overlord among cats. Really, at this time, you are still. Yoshida stretched out his hand to help Takahashi Makoto, but his hand stopped in mid-air because he saw that after Takahashi Makoto hung down, his abdomen began to flow out with blood. Damn it, Takahashi Makoto, you guy, hold on.